The United Kingdom's Ministry of Defence's latest intelligence update on Ukraine, July 21, 2023. In the coming days, Russia's Wagner Group is likely to release the last of its convict recruits from their mandated 6-month service. Its Project K prison recruitment scheme peaked in early 2023, conscripting at least 40,000 convicts. A significant number of the now pardoned convicts are expected to accept Wagner's offer of continued employment as professional contractors. Meanwhile, the Russian Ministry of Defense has assumed control of Wagner's prison recruitment pipeline. The conclusion of the convict recruitment scheme marks a milestone in Wagner's history and Russia's war in Ukraine. The prison recruits enabled Russia to capture Bakhmut, one of its few recent battlefield successes. The project transformed Wagner into the organization that openly challenged President Putin's authority last month. It also represents one of the most lethal episodes in modern military history, with an estimated 20,000 convict recruits killed within months. The Institute for the Study of War Russian Offensive Campaign Assessment. The arrest of former Russian FSB officer Igor Girkin on July 21 likely signals shifting power dynamics among Kremlin factions, potentially weakening the FSB. Girkin, an ultranationalist, was detained by the Russian Investigative Committee on extremism charges and will be held until September 18. Girkin unsuccessfully argued he was not a flight risk due to pending prosecution at The Hague. However, the court cited his notoriety and connections in law enforcement in ordering his detention. While Girkin had consistently criticized Putin, his May 25 telegram posts on unpaid VDV regiments seemingly triggered his arrest. Some sources link Girkin's arrest to conflicts within the Angry Patriots Club he led, including clashes with the Wagner Group. Others see it as the Kremlin targeting disloyal Russian nationalists. Regardless, the timing and rationale behind Girkin's arrest point to factions maneuvering against each other, with the FSB potentially on the defensive. The case warrants monitoring for further indications of power shifts among Putin's elites and security services. Girkin's incarceration may empower other Siloviki seeking to expand their influence in Russia's security apparatus. The Institute for the Study of War key takeaways today. According to Russian insiders, Girkin's arrest is part of the Kremlin's crackdown on select high-profile ultranationalists after the Wagner Group's armed rebellion on June 24. Girkin's detention follows criminal charges against other nationalist figures with security service ties, signaling potential targeting of prominent voices who frequently leak insider Kremlin information. Wagner's rebellion likely recalibrated power balances around Putin, potentially undercutting support for some patrons, including Girkin's, and their influence. Russian forces carried out further missile and drone strikes across southern Ukraine for the 4th consecutive night on July 21, following Russia's withdrawal from the Black Sea Grain Initiative. The arrest and targeting of well-connected nationalists like Girkin point to shifting elite dynamics in Moscow after Wagner's bold challenge to Putin's authority. Russia's resumption of attacks in the south underscores its resolve to continue strikes on Ukrainian infrastructure despite international fallout over impeding grain shipments. The Kremlin is likely walking back the Russian Defense Ministry's provocative, July 19 declaration that civilian vessels in the Black Sea are now viable targets. This rhetorical shift aims to keep options open for modifying rather than replacing the Black Sea Grain Initiative. Moscow appears focused on leveraging the deal's suspension to coerce major concessions from the West, rather than abandoning the agreement altogether. The Kremlin likely judges it can extract more gains by amending rather than ending the deal. President Putin persisted in efforts to undermine NATO cohesion and fray Ukraine's ties with NATO allies. This serves dual aims of strengthening Russia's hand in ongoing grain deal negotiations, while eroding long-term Western military assistance for Kyiv. Meanwhile, Ukrainian counteroffensive operations continued making incremental gains across at least 3 frontline sectors on July 21, though momentum has slowed since earlier advances in Kharkiv and Kherson. The Kremlin's vacillating rhetoric on the grain deal underscores Moscow's interest in securing sanctions relief and other wins, not permanently halting exports. Putin's overt attempts at dividing NATO reveal Russian hopes of fracturing Western unity and resolve on Ukraine amid fraught grain deal modification talks. Pro-Wagner sources continue voicing support for Yevgeny Prigozhin despite uncertainty around the group's future and his role following its armed rebellion against Kremlin authorities. French official Emmanuel Bon's July 21 comments about Chinese military aid to Russia likely referred to dual-use tech and non-lethal equipment, not confirmation of weapon supplies. A Russian military blogger with airborne forces ties denied recent rumors that the commander of the 7th Guards Mountain Airborne Division, Major General Alexander Kornev, has been dismissed. Russian forces conducted offensive operations near Kupiansk, Kreminna, and Bakhmut on July 21, claiming advances around Kupiansk and Kreminna. Fighting also continued along the Avdiivka-Donetsk city line. Wagner-linked voices remain outwardly loyal to Prigozhin despite his fallout with the Kremlin, but the group's future agenda and structure are unclear. France's qualified statements highlight continued uncertainty around the extent of China's materiel support to Russia's war effort. The military blogger's denial of rumors about Kornev's dismissal signals limited verified information on shakeups among Russian battlefield leadership. Ukrainian forces continued counteroffensive operations around Bakhmut, along the Kupiansk-Svatov-Kreminna line, and on the Avdiivka-Donetsk city axis, making gains around Bakhmut. Russian forces carried out limited ground attacks across western Donetsk Oblast, the western Donetsk-eastern Zaporizhia border area, and south of Orikhiv, claiming advances south of Orikhiv. Ukrainian counteroffensives also pressed forward in the western Donetsk-eastern Zaporizhia border region and western Zaporizhia Oblast, securing gains in the former area. Ukraine's counterattacks remain active on several fronts, with the Bakhmut and western Donetsk-eastern Zaporizhia areas seeing continued Ukrainian progress. Russia continues undertaking limited ground assaults across multiple regions, likely aimed at slowing Ukrainian advances, with uncertain impact. The localized Ukrainian gains point to a persistent but incremental Ukrainian counteroffensive, while Russia looks to blunt momentum through limited attacks along the line of contact. Russian authorities stated they will modify a draft law to now immediately raise the conscription age limit for the spring 2024 cycle, scrapping a prior gradual phase-in. The accelerated increase aims to expand Russia's pool of eligible draftees more rapidly amid manpower shortages. Meanwhile, Russian occupation officials persist in systematically relocating Ukrainian children from occupied territories to Russia. This forced transfer of civilians violates international law and may constitute a war crime. Separately, a Wagner-linked source claimed the group has temporarily moved its headquarters from Molchino, Russia, to Belarus. The source said Wagner is fully engaged in transferring combat experience to the Belarusian military, likely to boost its capabilities before any Belarusian intervention in Ukraine. Russia's urgent conscription age hike highlights Moscow's scramble to access more manpower to sustain the war effort. The Wagner relocation points to closer Russian-Belarusian military cooperation and Russia's efforts to ready Belarusian forces for potential Ukraine operations.